A lot of men pride themselves on being kind, being patient, being understanding, being the one who doesn't create problems, the one who stays calm, the one who gives people space, the one who keeps the peace. And on the surface, those all sound like good things because sometimes they are. But sometimes what looks like kindness is actually fear. And that can be hard to admit because no one wants to think maybe I actually wasn't being kind. Maybe I was just scared. But this is where honesty matters because kindness and fear can sometimes create the exact same behavior. And from the outside, they can look identical. For example, giving someone space can be healthy, or it can be avoidance. Staying calm can be grounded, or it can be emotional shutdown. Being patient can be maturity, or it can be fear of speaking up. Being understanding can be compassionate, or it can be self-abandonment. It's the same behavior, but completely different internal states. And that distinction matters because behavior alone doesn't tell you the full story. Two people can do the exact same thing externally and be operating from completely different places internally. One person gives space because they genuinely trust the connection, and another person gives space because they're terrified of being perceived as needy or clingy. It's the same action, but completely different nervous system states, different emotional meanings. And when I say self abandonment, I'm not talking about something dramatic. I mean the small moments where you leave your own truth to preserve someone else's comfort, where you know what you feel but you disconnect from it, where you override your own boundaries because keeping the connection feels safer than honesty. That's what makes it painful because it usually happens pretty quietly, not all at once, but little by little. Because real kindness comes from choice. Fear based niceness comes from self protection. One says, I care about this person, and the other says, I'm not trying to lose this person. Very different energies. For example, maybe something bothered you, a boundary got crossed, a need wasn't being met, something fell off. And instead of bringing it up, you told yourself, it's fine. Don't make this a thing. Be understanding. Don't be needy. Don't ruin the vibe. And maybe part of you genuinely wanted peace, but maybe another part of you was afraid they'd pull away, afraid they'd think you were too much, afraid honesty would create tension, afraid that the connection wouldn't survive the truth. And if that's what's happening, that's not grounded kindness. That's fear managing behavior. And to be clear, fear doesn't always feel dramatic. It doesn't always feel like panic. Sometimes fear feels subtle, like overthinking, hesitation, like carefully editing yourself, trying to say the right things in the right way so the other person won't react badly. That still counts. And this is where a lot of people get confused because fear based niceness often feels morally superior. It feels like I'm being the bigger person, I'm being patient, I'm being understanding, but internally your body tells the real story. Because fear-based niceness usually feels contracted. There's tension, hesitation, a subtle pressure in your chest, maybe tightness in your throat, maybe overthinking, maybe emotional monitoring, watching their mood, watching your tone, trying to predict their reaction before you even speak. That's not peace. That's anxiety wearing good manners. And this is important. Most people are not doing this consciously. They're not trying to manipulate anyone. They're not trying to be fake. Usually, they learn somewhere along the line that honesty creates danger, that conflict creates disconnection. So they adapted. They might think having needs risks rejection, but adaptation is human, not shameful. But what protects you short term can quietly cost you long term. Imagine your partner says something dismissive to you, or repeatedly becomes inconsistent, or pulls away emotionally. And instead of saying, hey, something about this doesn't sit right with me, you become extra understanding, extra patient, extra accommodating. Not because that's what feels true, but because you're hoping that your kindness will stabilize the connection again. That's important because now kindness isn't generosity, it's a strategy. And strategy built on fear creates resentment. Because eventually, the part of you that kept staying quiet starts asking, why am I the only one carrying this? Why don't they see how much I'm giving? Why do I feel unseen? But the painful part is you may never actually have shown them your full truth. So now resentment starts to build around a version of you that was never fully honest to begin with. And that's hard, but important to understand. And this doesn't only happen in dating, it can happen with friends, family, work, people pleasing in general, saying yes when you mean no, smiling when something feels wrong, avoiding honest conversations because of the discomfort, and it can feel dangerous. For example, maybe at work someone keeps putting extra responsibilities on you, and every part of you wants to say, hey, this isn't actually okay. But instead, you smile, you say yes, you stay agreeable. Not because you truly want to, but because conflict feels risky, because disappointing people feels uncomfortable to you. But that's the same pattern, just a different setting. It's the same nervous system strategy. And when I say nervous system strategy, I just mean your body learned a certain way of staying safe. And over time, that became a survival pattern and automatic response. Not because it's always right, but because at some point it probably worked, or at least felt safer than the alternative. That's why these patterns can feel so automatic. And this is where grounded masculinity becomes important, because grounded masculinity is not aggression, it's not dominance, it's not emotional passivity disguised as kindness. It's honest steadiness, the ability to stay respectful without abandoning what's true, the ability to care without becoming self erasing, the ability to tolerate tension without immediately trying to smooth everything over. Because emotional steadiness isn't the absence of discomfort, it's the capacity to stay connected to yourself while discomfort is present. That's a very different thing. A lot of men think grounded means never feeling tension, never feeling anxiety, never feeling uncertainty. But groundedness isn't about never feeling pressure, it's about pressure not completely taking you out of yourself. Sometimes the most grounded thing you can do is disappoint someone. Not cruelly, not carelessly, but honestly. So, how do you know the difference? You ask yourself, am I being kind or am I trying to avoid discomfort? Am I actually choosing this or am I just scared of what happens if I don't? Does this feel open or contracted? That last question matters because your body often tells you the truth first. Real kindness feels cleaner. It may still be uncomfortable, but there's less internal self betrayal. Fear based niceness feels heavy, feels more anxious, more performative, like you're trying to manage the moment instead of actually participating in it, honestly. So, if you've been the person who was always too nice, don't rush into shame. A lot of people learn that strategy for understandable reasons, but awareness changes things. Because once you can start to see the difference, you stop confusing self abandonment with kindness. Because kindness is beautiful and compassion does matter, patience matters, but not when they cost you your truth, not when they become fear wearing a kind face. Real grounded masculinity doesn't require emotional hardness, but it does require emotional honesty, self respect, and the ability to stay present even when honesty feels uncomfortable with others and with yourself.